This podcast is being brought to you in part by the veteran-founded Hero Soap Company located in Phoenix, Arizona. In today's environment, we must be aware of the products we apply to our skin. As a two-time cancer survivor, I cannot afford to take chances, and I use these products myself. The soaps will leave you feeling clean and refreshed. All the products made by the Hero Soap Company are made in the United States with the highest quality ingredients sourced from companies in the United States whenever possible. The products are made in small batches to ensure high quality and contain premium essential oils and fragrance. All Hero soaps are created without synthetic colorants, parabens, and sulfates that are irritating to the eyes, skin, mouth, and lungs, and are cruelty-free, meaning these products are not tested on animals. Each 5-ounce bar of soap is handmade in Phoenix, Arizona, and the body wash is available in 8 ounces with such refreshing scents as the woods, tea tree, lavender, the fields, bourbon, lime, the pines, and Arctic. You will absolutely love this soap. Please also check out their gear for sale. All the products are reasonably priced. Being veteran-founded, the company understands the dedication and sacrifice that each family makes to serve their country. A portion of sales is donated back to charities that are focused on helping veterans and our first responders. Over 1,200 bars have been sent to our deployed troops. Please check out their website, herosoapcompany.com, for pricing and a detailed description of all the products. When ordering, use the code RAP for a 10% discount. The company information will be listed in the podcast notes and featured on the podcast website, Facebook group, page, and the podcast Instagram. Welcome, everyone, to It's a Wrap with Rap. I am your host, Ron Rappaport. I would like to thank all of our great listeners, viewers, supporters, and sponsors for helping to make this podcast such a success. The podcast is being heard in all 50 states, all provinces of Canada, and over 70 countries around the world on all major platforms and on our website. Please visit our podcast website, itsawrapwithrap.com, to find all the episodes, previews of future episodes, and find products and services from our sponsors. This podcast features people who have overcome life's challenges and adversities, people who can inspire, motivate, and educate us on an assortment of topics. My guest today is Blair Sorrel. Blair is the author of A Schizoid at Smith, How Overparenting Leads to Underachieving. Blair is here today to talk about a little-known condition she has called Schizoid Personality Disorder, occurring in about 3.1 to 4.9% of the general U.S. population, slightly more common among men. Her memoir and her public appearances are bringing a spotlight to this condition, and it is a testament to Blair overcoming the challenges of her disorder and persevering to help others. Welcome, Blair, to the podcast. It's an honor to have you. I read your book. I found it fascinating. Just to let you know, we both share a common similarity. I myself advocate to educate the public about male breast cancer, accounting for only 1% of the breast cancers in the United States, of which I've had it twice, so I can understand what it's like for you to advocate for a condition considered rare by most. First off, tell us what SPD, we're gonna use the term SPD for Schizoid Personality Disorder, is, the symptoms, and how it differs from schizophrenia, as some may confuse the terminology.
Well, the only thing that's really in common with schizophrenia is the prefix schizo. Schizoid personality disorder is a maladaptation, character disorder, whereas everyone knows that schizophrenia is a psychosis and a serious one. It's rarer than SPD. perceived as somebody who's an extreme loner. And the reason that I've wrote the book is that being a loner and being an impaired loner have consequences for somebody's ability to self-sustain, to manage. A person with SPD may not be able to work. There is impairment when the person is around other people, given the level of social anxiety that a schizoid may have. I also want to be clear in saying that not every schizoid is impaired, but for those who are ability to live a fairly normal life, the person would be eligible for disability. It could result in homelessness, substance abuse, alcoholism, besides just a preference to spend time alone.
Mhm.
So I wanted to highlight that in spite of the gifts that I was given, I underachieved and I didn't really understand in many situations. So I did an analysis of what happened to me in childhood, the kind of parenting that I had, and how this may have fostered a phobia, an impairment, being among people, an inability to concentrate in their presence, a dread of authority figures, poor self-esteem, and then, of course, other symptoms, running late whenever I was supposed to meet people, not being able to form goals or make decisions, just being perceived as different in these respects because the average person doesn't live with a phobia.
Right. Now, is there a lot of self-absorption and maybe a secretive
Yes,
nature to this?
there's excessive self-absorption because a person who's isolated or marginalized compensates with fantasy and maybe developing a kind of fantasy life to substitute for the lack of social interaction or differentiate between reality and fantasy. And that's different from schizophrenia, serious delusional disorders.
Right. Can you talk about your growing up years, your family dynamics, your school life, friendships, and how that may have affected your SPD?
Well, aside from being perceived as different, I was alone a lot. And I was ostracized. I was a pariah. That begins very early in the schoolyard. I was just at times my reactions were perceived out of touch. I didn't have the greatest social skills, which one develops. So social skills experience, they become nuanced. And so I wasn't reading the cues. I was just generally very, very awkward and withdrew to my books, TV. You know, my mother was very well-intentioned, but overbearing. My father was marital strife. And a lot of the things that I read about SPD, schizoids come from families, or it is speculated that they come from families where there's some combination of neglect and abuse, a bleak childhood. Their marital strife, my mother's terminal illness, had I positive, I think developmentally, I would have been a very different person, or if there had been professional intervention. But that was also the era. I think there's much more transparency now about everything than there
Right.
was back in the day.
When did your family first learn or sense that you had this issue, these issues, let's
Well,
say?
even in childhood, I remember going to some kind of psychological testing. I think I called it Miller psychological testing. And I overheard my mother talking about autism because sometimes schizoid and autism are confused, but they didn't really know what was wrong with me, just that I was different.
Yeah. Now, as far as fitting in, what are the distinguishing traits that set you apart from the others? Do you view others as a threat to you or anything like that?
Well, I think that schizoids operate from the position of being inferior. They're made to feel inferior because they've been abused. They don't develop good self-esteem. They just might become, in an abstract way, fearful of going into any social situation, anticipating rejection. So you have an anticipatory anxiety, which caused me to run late. And of course, if you're chronically tardy, that in and of itself is going to meet with rejection by other people. Um, if
Barefoot Essential Oils is owned and operated by certified aromatherapists who have been providing all natural, chemical-free health and beauty products for 8 years. Barefoot's essential oils are sourced from over 35 countries around the world. The oils are 100% pure, therapeutic, organically grown, ethically produced, and free from chemicals or pesticides. The oils do not contain fillers, additives, or any other type of dilution. Every batch of essential oil is GCMS, that's gas chromatography mass spectrometry, tested and analyzed by chemists for purity. Every bottle shipped has a lot number that you may reference to view the GCMS report on that essential oils product page on barefoot.com. To prevent oxidation, containers are nitrogen capped to create a barrier between the oil and oxygen, and the containers are stored in a cool, temperature-controlled, windowless room. Barefoot was founded in 2010 in Utah as a small company to meet the local needs of health stores, chiropractors, spas, and individuals. Over the years, Barefoot has continued to reach more and more people across the United States through word of mouth and on the internet. Barefoot's products are now used in every corner of the country by thousands of customers. Because of the high quality of the products and the affordable prices offered, Barefoot continues to see exponential growth. At Barefoot, their mission is to provide nature's finest and purest essential oils and natural health products at affordable prices, done so with integrity and honesty. Please click the link provided in the podcast notes for detailed information and to order.
If you're in fantasy and you're not really listening, that's seen as rejecting of other people and disrespectful. It's not intentional. It was a defense that I learned to self-protect. What other defense would a child have from overwhelming criticism and negativity or abuse, castigation, whatever you want to call it, but not to listen? So
Right.
it became stuck.
Blair, can this develop as an adult, or does it always seem to develop as a from a young age?
It can't develop as an adult. It's a set of attitudes and coping mechanisms. Um, Eleanor Greenberg, in her book Borderline Narcissistic and Schizoid Adaptation, would be a good source for this, or any of her writings for that matter. She contributes to psychology today, but it absolutely is developed in childhood
Okay.
exclusively.
Okay. All right. Now, escaping to a fantasy life is part of the disorder. Can you tell us about yours, what your fantasy life was like?
Well, I'm less afraid now and less in fantasy, but what I go into in the book a lot is about the stones and developing fantasies, whereas I wasn't studying for my SATs, but I was thinking in terms of becoming the linchpin for the Stones, that I would be on their jet. And I had a lot of fantasies about rock and roll groups and being a pivotal player in that kind of arena, for
Okay.
example.
Yeah. And I know you allude to a lot of the musical groups in that time in the book,
Yes,
so which I thought was pretty cool to read about.
thank you.
Yeah. How does the disorder affect people with SPD concerning relationships with the opposite sex? Is there dating, or is that just out of the question? Is marriage something that is rare? How does that work?
Well, some of them marry and even have children, some of them. I would say that they probably want to date, but are too fearful of intimacy. Um, some are completely disgusted by the notion of having sex. I wouldn't think their relationships are too successful, um, because they're blocked from intimacy. But they're fearful of intimacy or proximity. And this was observed in so many different situations and was so disastrous for me that it just got to the point where I figured it was better for me or a prospective date to bow out. You know, I didn't want to subject myself to something that was uncomfortable,
Right.
that was blocked, or the other person. It's none of this is intended to be injurious of other people, I don't think.
Right. Right. It's just the way you feel and your comfort level. Would that would that be summing
Yeah,
it up?
they're frightened. Um, I think that, you know, that people just assume. Unfortunately, there was the episode with Robert Bowers, the Tree of Life shooter, who's at first thought to be schizophrenic, but he's schizoid. And you may recall that Park Dietz went on record saying that he had a maladaptation, a character disorder, but he killed 11 people and
Yeah.
injured six in 2018. That I think is a rarity. I would suspect that most schizoids just want to be left alone.
Yeah.
It's that reclusive person.
Where what qualities does one that has SPD need as they mature to evolve out of their learned mistrust and intimacy issues and no longer qualify for a SPD diagnosis?
Well, uh, if you learn whole object relations, as Eleanor Greenberg pointed out, that you can see both positive and negative in people, that you don't operate on the assumption that people are absolute. You don't demonize people. You're able to see them as more nuanced. And I think if you're fortunate enough to venture out little by little and go into situations which are comfortable, you will find people who are nurturing. I think that the symptoms likely subside if you do make that attempt to gravitate to those kinds of situations or milieu. I did notice when I was among surrogate mothers who were very warm and fuzzy that I felt more confident, that I was able to focus better, I was more punctual. So it is possible to gain mastery over the self-defeating symptoms.
Would you say that one has to get away from an abusive family if that was what was going on in earlier
It is
times?
unfortunate. Excuse me. Unfortunately, I do think that they should get away from their abusive family. Unfortunately, SPD is a kind of double whammy because if you can't really work, you may be financially dependent on your family. There's one schizoid I know who never left home until nearly 70 years old, and that's because his house was sold. And this man has an MBA,
Wow.
but he worked in lower level jobs. He can't make eye contact. He's incoherent, a very intelligent, educated individual, underemployed, no friends, most activities with the parents. So you may be creating a kind of lifelong dependency in your children by doing this. If you don't care about their emotional well-being, which of course I would hope any parent would,
Yeah.
you may want to consider that you become, you know, the enabler in that sense. that they can't make a livable wage.
Do you have any in this community, do you have any support groups or any way, is there any groups where you can get together with other people with the podcast welcomes the Edge Coffee Company as a supporter and sponsor. Mike, the founder of Edge, wanted to build a different kind of coffee company, one that makes a high quality product that is truly good for customers and makes the world a better place through the production of coffee, and also be an engine for good by directing at least 10% of the profits to a sustainable social mission. As everyone knows, coffee can be a health beverage, but it doesn't have to cause jitteriness and anxiety or digestive issues. Coffee is full of antioxidants, vitamins, minerals, and polyphenols that your body needs to function optimally. Yet, pesticide residue and mold toxins can negatively impact your health. Commercial coffee production can be a nasty business where the environment and people are exploited. Typical commercial grade coffee is processed with huge amounts of chemical fertilizer and synthetic pesticides. Often it contains trace amounts of mycotoxins. Any wonder people feel anxious, jittery, and have digestive issues from drinking it. That is why Edge Coffee is always certified organic and tested in a third-party lab and found to have no detectable traces of mycotoxins. Edge uses only specialty grade beans. Specialty grade is a technical term that applies to about the top 3% of coffee beans produced worldwide. Not only do these beans taste the best, they are also the healthiest. 10% of Edge Coffee's profits fund interest-free loans to entrepreneurs in Peru. Edge is so sure that you will love the taste of their premium clean coffee, free from mycotoxins and pesticide residue, that they offer a generous refund policy. Please click the link in the podcast notes to order and get detailed information on Edge Coffee. SPD and talk about your issues, that type of thing?
Well, they're not joiners, but I do see that on Reddit and Quora they post quite a bit, and I've quoted some in Quora. I'm not aware of any, and I don't see that the book is going to be a gateway to that. I'm finding actually that people are saying, I have a relative who's bipolar or schizophrenic or some other disorder, that they feel more comfortable about discussing their dirty laundry, if you will.
Yeah. But as far as you know, that there's no groups that exist out there for this.
As far as I know, there are certainly a lot online about it, and there's certainly recovery centers and clinicians who are geared to this particular disorder, but I don't know. And I think that it would be still stunning for most schizoid to go into group situation, much as they would like to see someone on a one-to-one because of trust issues.
I can understand that. What was the catalyst that spurred you to write your memoir, and how long did it take you to write it?
I have childhood friends, Jared and Elvin, in the book, and they would see me a couple of times a year. And Jared, their names have been protected, said it would be a shame if I came and went without writing a book. And I just casually mentioned that I had been thinking about writing on this topic and that I felt it was the best use for my writing because so little was known about it. I had never written anything of this length. In fact, I was blocked in that area too. I wrote letters and postcards and very, very short stories, but nothing of significance. So was I going to be able to write a book and go back that many years and bare my soul being blocked from intimacy? But I decided I would read, see writing programs, and I contacted Harry Friedman, the author, and he became my writing coach. And I sent a writing sample to him, and I did a chapter a month and wrote the book within a year.
Wow, pretty good.
Thank you.
Now you get accepted. Well, wait, let's back up a minute. How did your family receive the book?
Well, my sister Lorna has been very, very excited that the reviews have been generally favorable, and she said it was a huge accomplishment, and she was very happy for me. I'm not really in touch with my younger sister. My cousin and his wife, who are my cousins in the book, they were excited about it. In fact, his wife raved about it.
Wow.
It's a sort of funny thing because I truly felt I'm airing our dirty laundry. Nobody's particularly sympathetic as in this book. They're not, they're more antagonists than, and how are people going to feel about it? But I had to say, what's the greater good here? Is it my family with whom I have marginal contact, or the families out there, the afflicted, the teacher, the guidance counselor, the clinicians who could be helped?
Sure. Absolutely.
So
Are your parents still with us?
no, they're not.
Okay. So obviously,
Yeah,
no reaction there.
yeah,
Uh, Now you get accepted to Smith College, pretty prestigious college.
yes.
Tell us about those years. How did you make out there?
Well, I was uneven. I had a lot of emotional problems, and when I look back at it, I wish I had been more grounded. Unfortunately, when you have a disorder like this, you don't really have any control over it unless you're able to go into treatment. And I was resistant to treatment. My father would try to goad me, it would help me, especially having lost my mother in my teens, but I was so fearful of authority figures, my experience with them, that they were going to hurt me either through abuse or neglect. I anticipated that kind of a reenactment of what I had experienced from my parents or from teachers in the past. The stage had been set for me to have an aversion
Yeah.
to going and seeing an authority figure. Um, I don't know. I was just really a mess. I mean, my father felt that I latched onto religion because it was they were gut courses, that I underestimated myself. And I have to agree to some extent that there were probably more rigorous courses that I could have handled. But I had no confidence. I was really just devastated by my mother's loss, and that coincided with, I think, the onset of the worst symptoms of this disorder. And my father remarried very readily, and the woman saw me as a rival for my father because of our resemblance. It was very, very trying, and I think too much, all of it for me.
But you did graduate.
Oh, yeah, I graduated in good standing, in fact, and
And what was your degree in?
a BA in religion.
Okay. Be in religion. So what would you like for people who now know about SBD to take away from reading your book or just listening to you on this podcast? What would you like them to take away?
Well, I'd like them to think about overcorrecting, having unrealistic expectations of children, perhaps perfectionism, feeling like if you can't handle a child, seek professional intervention rather than take everything. If not everybody is meant to be a parent. And for parents who really don't want children, I would say don't have them. If you see any of the signs of what I've described in somebody young, seek
Yeah.
earlier intervention because that's the best hope they have, as with
Yeah.
anything else. Consider that words have long lasting injurious effects on people. I believe now there are more social options that if people can stay single lifelong without without a stigma. Um, Realize though that if this does happen, that it's a double whammy, that you may have children who are dependent a lot longer than you would wish them to be. They may
Yeah.
be stunted. They may be kids who grow old but never really grow up.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a very high percentage possibility. Now, to people suffering from SBD and others out there dealing with life's adversities with little hope, what words of advice do you have for them?
Well, I would go for broke and go get professional help. I mean, at some point or other, it's just too painful to try to deal with these disorders on your own. There's too much rejection, too much instability. And then, of course, I think there's depression and anxiety. Pascal Goucelin in the book had said that she's a clinician, that most of her schizoids were very depressed. It's in the section where I talk about that she says they created a fake world.
Yeah.
It's worth at least going once or twice. You may really like the therapist. You may find you feel a lot differently about yourself, even very early on. It could make, life-changing effect on you. It's certainly, I think, the lesser evil than living with SPD. And a clinician would say that man is meant to be social and that there's more potential for happiness than spending your life in isolation.
So your status right now is you're just living by yourself, or are you in a
I, yeah, I live with my cats. I keep busy. I'm not lonesome. I usually do a lot of community service in addition to book promotion and other writing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Blair, what are your future plans? Are you planning to write anything new? Are you planning to do advocacy work on this subject to a bigger extent? What's in the future?
Well, I'm toying with the idea of adapting the book and a possible sequel, but that's really, I've spent over 3 years now just on this particular book, so that's really premature. I mean, I'd like to write something else of substance.
Okay, well, that sounds good. If people want to contact you, is that an option or that you offer?
Yes, of course. There's a website called Rocking Tributes, and there's a contact form on there. And
Okay,
I would encourage them to go on the site anyhow, because we offer a template that lets them tell their own story
it's called, give me that again, Rocking.
that was created with the book.
Okay, could you
Rocking Tributes.com.
rockingtribute.com. And we'll put that in the
Yes.
podcast notes. So for everybody listening out there, it
Okay.
will be in the
Thank you.
podcast notes.
Thank
And
you.
I want to thank you so much, Blair, for being on the podcast and educating everyone on SPD. And I wish you all the best in going forward in your life pursuits. Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for,
very much for having me
oh,
and for
anytime
yeah,
we can help, just reach out.
opening this window.
Comments and suggestions for anybody out there for the podcast, you can email me. It's a wrap with rap at gmail.com. Our Facebook page is It's a Wrap with Rap. We have a Facebook group with a couple thousand people in it. Instagram, It's a Wrap with Rap Podcast. Twitter, or X as it's known, is at Rapper130. That's WRAPPER 130. Our website is It's a Wrap with Rap.com. We're on YouTube. All the episodes are on YouTube. It's a Wrap with Rap, the podcast uncut. I want to thank everyone for listening. I want everyone to please stay safe. And for now, it's a wrap.